Alrighty. Hello, everybody. It's great to be back here for another day of NSG spoiler season for the Automata initiative. I'm joined by three lovely guests today, Eric, Bard, and Charlotte, and I will have them each do a quick introduction about themselves, and then we will get on to today's, I think, really exciting spoilers. So, Eric, first, can you introduce yourself a little and maybe say when you started playing Netrunner?
Well, first of all, Jeff, you're lovely too. So thank you for that compliment. I'm Eric. I am one of the hosts of Neon Static, if you are familiar with that. And I started playing Netrunner the 2015, I guess, but kind of not competitively. Got competitive right about the time when they canceled the game. FFG canceled their publication of the game, and then petered off. But about January or December of this year, rediscovered it, and obviously have been crazy about it.
Fantastic. And Bart, I actually have you listed next on my intro, so I'll have you introduce yourself next.
Yeah, for sure. So hi, I'm Bard. Thanks again, Eric, for having me on.
Nope,
Nope,
I'm
not
Eric.
Eric. Sorry, Eric. Thanks, Jeff, for having me on. So I started playing right when Flashpoint released. Actually, that was what 2016. So it's a bit weird now that the Flashpoint's rotating because I've been playing with it my whole time. But I fell off the game for a couple of years and came back January-ish. Started looking for places, moved, and I figured looking around, I was like, hey, Netrunner's still alive and well, and it's time to start playing again. And it's been great fun ever since. So happy to be on.
Fantastic. And Charlotte, you're last but most certainly not least.
Thanks for having me on. I'm Charlotte. I've been playing Netrunner since, pretty much exactly 8 years, which was in the Sun cycle, a long time ago. In various intensities, mostly sort of casual kitchen table Netrunner. For a year now, I've been quite active in the Boston, Cambridge, Massachusetts meta, and excited to see the new cards.
Yeah,
Bard, you have been playing for exactly one cycle.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. One full rotation. Fantastic. Yeah, we've got, as Ben is saying in the chat, we got a full New England special on tonight. So, while Charlotte's still here, that'll count. But anyway, we have I think four cards and a new mechanic that we can all talk about. So I think it's gonna be a pretty busy day, and we might just go to the first card, which introduces our first new mechanic. So I will read out the text of this card, and then we'll start talking about it. So this card is Estorabo. It's a run event. It says run a central server. The first time you encounter a piece of ice during that run, bypass it. Threat 4. The second time you encounter a piece of ice during that run, you may spend a click to bypass it. And the parenthetical text is, this ability is active if any player has 4 or more agenda points and is a 3 influence criminal card. So I'll just briefly go in and say this is the introduction of a new mechanic. There's a whole article up on the Null Signal Games website. It's definitely worth a read. But Threat is this new mechanic where certain abilities become active when either player has that number of agenda points, which, to me seems like a supernatural mechanic for Netrunner. A little surprising. There's been cards that kind of hinted at that, but nothing exactly quite like this. So, I think it's kind of interesting. I want to open it up to the floor first if someone wants to go first here.
So, Estorabo is a capoeira movement, which you can see in the art. That is, a sweep and then a flip kind of thing. I am not a capoeira expert, but I did look that much up. And I think thematically, right, you got like the net space on the bottom and or vice versa, but I think it's the real world on the top and the net space on the bottom. The article referred to this as indoor job, I think, as opposed to inside job as the kind of the pet name. But it's inside job plus the same influence, the same cost, I think, but better only on centrals, which is very interesting.
I think thematically it's super cool with the Brazilian cycle, and of course it's clearly meant to synergize with the new criminal ID, which doesn't want to break subroutines, so you need to bypass the ice some other way. To me, so right when I saw this, it made me think: is this a replacement for getting rid of things, like getting rid of inside job eventually? So it makes me wonder if this is already planning for um, all FFG cards eventually leaving the game. Maybe. I don't know if that's happening. That's just what it makes me think about.
We all look pointedly at Jeff for a cue.
Jeff tries to put on his best poker face and is very glad that the whole stream can't see it. I do think it's worth, this very clearly is going to be a nice card for Mercury, because, it will probably by the time the Corp is consistently icing up both centrals for 2 credits, or 2 ice, excuse me, someone is on 4 points. And so this might be a tool to kind of get the last little bit of access you've seen. Though you probably, just getting a single with this, or even maybe seeing 2 cards, is maybe not everything you want. So you're going to want to find something to stack to make this probably a little bit, go just a little bit further.
It's also Mercury on the card, right? I believe that's they're on the card.
So I think, we've compared it immediately to Inside Job, but I think it will be used quite differently from Inside Job, because at least when I'm playing Inside Job, I use that to somehow stop the Corp from scoring behind 1 ice within the run, right? Like you use it to probably to get into remote servers early in the game, when you maybe don't have all your breakers up and you want to stop the Corp from just jamming an agenda behind it in the run. And so this cannot do that. So I think the way it will be used will actually be pretty different from Inside Job.
I think this will be very interesting to see how many people pair this with something like Swift, especially with the threat 4 side of it as well. It's essentially instead of paying 2 to bypass 2 pieces of ice, it's a pay 1 click and 2 credits, which all in all, I look at that and I go, that's pretty solid returns if you're spending 1 click to bypass 2 pieces of ice that you're encountering. And I like that idea. I know it's maybe not as competitively minded. It's kind of kitchen sinky, but I look at it with something like Ken, you're trying to get as much money out of your run events as possible, going for something where you're hammering centrals, maybe with I don't know how you do this with twinning. I guess you could do prepaids with it, but I think this offers a lot of versatility that, while I think Inside Job is just a good, I don't want to call it a sledgehammer, but it's just a good run event, right? This feels like it's meant to be more of a directed scalpel on centrals, and I think that's really kind of playing into this idea of criminals being good at focusing on the central servers. It's an exciting card for sure. I look at it that way.
Yeah, I think the twinning is a really good shout. I think like both twinning and Wake Implant immediately stand out to me as potential just kind of generic synergy cards, because they allow you to kind of extend the reach of this and impact of this event, which can sometimes be like, oh yeah, just going for a single is not great. And prepaid voice pad, it's been a little bit below the like standard competitive meta, but it definitely seems like, especially with cards like twinning, it has some it doesn't just have to be a good economy engine if it also does something else. And maybe this is the way that Crim can start to exploit the twinning a little bit more and stack it with some really good kind of early game pressure they've been well known about.
Andre in chat, am I going to get salty when the 2 ice R&D gets wild vibratoed to Hermes my agenda? Maybe. Also with Mercury, even more likely to happen, right? Because if you get in, you get to see 2, sorry.
I'm just thinking of a criminal deck now that's running Maw, 3 of these, and just, doing everything they can to maul you every turn, and I'm shaking my head, but with a smile on my face. So,
Yeah, the threat mechanic is really exciting, right? Like this, we've only seen a couple of cards, and I believe even the folks who've gotten previews have only seen a couple of cards with that mechanic, unless they have exclusives. And the possibilities for balancing the game around this is an entirely new axis for balancing the game. I was thinking about Obokata Protocol with respect to threat. What if we could say Obokata Protocol only has its ability when threat 5? That makes that card something that you can play around a lot easier, right? You have to go find it easier early before the threat level is too high. And then once you get one, it turns the other ones on, right? And just like all things like that, where there's a mechanic that early on in the game it needs to be tamed, but later needs to be turned on. I'm super excited to see what NSG's cooked up for that mechanic.
Yeah, I might actually throw to the other card we got in the threat article, because I think it's an interesting kind of comparison to Estorabo, which I just just playing with some streaming stuff on my end. Okay, so I got this card up. This is Ateeny. It is a Jinteki Code Gate. It is 6 to res and 5 strength. It is also subtyped AP. And its text is Threat 3. The runner cannot spend credits while subroutines on this ice are resolving. And then it has 3 subroutines, which is do 1 net damage unless the runner pays 2 credits. And it has that 2 more times. So this is, a familiar spin on a well-trod piece of ice, I guess.
Yeah, I guess we needed a DNA tracker replacement.
Yeah, no, it's
Oxy's just coming in with like alt names for each of these cards. DN Ant Tracker and earlier Inside Ear Job. Thanks.
Andre coming in with the hot fire take. Threat, this card becomes less interesting. I mean, arguably yes, but I think, a Jinteki card doing net damage, like, no one's too shocked by this. But I think this does help with some of the early blowouts that used to be pretty common, where it was, the runner like hits a DNA tracker like turn 1 or 2, and suddenly they're drained, 6 credits and 3 cards, and they're like can never get back up.
Well, I think it's a step in the direction of encouraging running a little bit more safe with a feeling more of safety when you have your killer online and you don't also need your decoder, right? I think DNA Tracker, it broke some rules and it made people salty about it, or it made it basically so that you either needed to be willing to take the net damage when you hit it and the loss of all the credits, or have money to break it and both kinds of breakers up to really worry about, mitigate the threat. So this is bringing things back towards, if you have your killer, you can have a pretty good feeling in your tummy when you make that run. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's it's been a complaint that a lot of old heads have had, and I think even newer players have. Like, I think it is a little bit frustrating to be like, oh yeah, I'm playing the game called Netrunner, but my actual plan here is to sit back until I get, 1,000,000 credits and all my breakers so that I can start playing the game. And so this says, hey, when you encounter this in the really early game, you get some choice about the cost you want to play. And when the game gets advanced enough, nope, now you got to start paying respect and figuring out what your plan is. So to some extent, this will, kind of help the corp if they're ahead of where the runner is on tempo. This ice does become pretty solid, so it's not just bad for the corp that this, doesn't turn on late, but I think it's, it's a solid little piece of ice. People are saying, oh, this is worse than Saisaton. Maybe, but it's also a different ice type. So Saisaton would not be my point of comparison that, some people were jumping to in the chat. But
You want to know what the name means and what it has to do with ants?
Do you know that?
Tinny it's a kind of ant which
Oh, it's a
participate
kind of ant.
in ant fungus mutualism.
Nice.
They're known for cutting grasses and leaves, carrying them to their colonies' nests, and using them to grow fungus on which
Oh,
they feed
yeah.
later.
Okay, yeah, I'm in favor of more ant based Netrunner cards.
Mushroom and ant.
Very neat. That's well, someone has clearly been doing his homework, and I appreciate it. But yeah, very quickly, Bart, any thoughts on Ateeny or the threat mechanic in general?
Yeah, I was going to bring up, I think the threat mechanic is very interesting. It's kind of, I think in recent months, we've really seen people playing into these, what do you call them? Like dead zone archives. I don't even know how to describe them, where you just load it with traps that are going to be negative impacts on your agenda points and making it so that you have to steal even more agendas and even more points and then playing stock buyback to get as many credits as possible. I think Threat's this interesting way of essentially taking something like a similar idea of the points in your score areas are going to matter and putting a new spin on it. I think Threat 3 is going to be really interesting for a card like this because you can just imagine somebody in Jinteki playing Hengeki onto an Obokata protocol and saying, would you like to access? You know, and if the runner takes it, they take all those points. Well, you have an online Ateeny now, and that's going to be a little bit more awkward. Now the runner has to sit back. They're going to actually have to respect your threats if they don't have a code gate online. And, you know, that's a very aggressive play, I think, from somebody in Jinteki. But I think Threat is going to open up a bunch of weird avenues, and I think Ateeny is very interesting as a code gate. It's too cheaper than DNA Tracker. It's one less strength, but hey, I really like the fact that it's a little bit more porous. You know, you can tax the runner a little bit more in those early games. It's not just a complete blowout if they hit it. And I think it's a pretty fun code gate, all things considered. I do agree that it becomes a little bit less interesting when the Threat 3 is active, but that's only going to happen after, I don't know, let's say turn 5 if you're playing Jinteki, maybe turn 8. I feel like Jinteki games go long, like maybe 20 turns. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me. I just play Grinder. That's all it is. So,
I guess
so I'm happy. I'll put it that way. I'm happy. It's more cards for me to play with.
it'll be interesting to go up against this and decide what actually feels worse, the 3 net or the 6 credits, or a mix. You could do 2 net and 2 credits. Like, that seems okay. You know, it's not the most punishing ice in the world.
Yeah. When you say it that way, it's like, oh yeah, that's maybe a little bit weak for a 6-cost ice. But I'm like, well, at some point the runner probably does have to start breaking this, and the actual code gates we have available to break this are not cheap, right? The runner is probably spending around 5 credits most of the time to break this piece of ice, which is a good chunk for you know, as long as they have to run through this twice, you're coming out pretty ahead as the corp.
What are we expecting the post rotation once the bin breakers are gone? The major decoders to be that are going to have to deal with this.
It's whatever Shapers are rocking right now. So Inversificator, and Golo, those are the big ones that I'm thinking of, and that's
The oldies but goodies, Gordian Blade and Abagnale.
Yeah.
My first instinct would be to go back to those.
Yep. In Crim, we've got. Oh no, you said Abagnale. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Or not what's the other one that they play?
No, I'm pretty sure it's Abagnale.
Is it Abagnale's the
code
trash
gate
to bypass, right?
The
but
cat's
it's
cradle.
Yeah, and then
break.
it can also do 2 to boost, one to break. So it's basically like Gordium. You have to boost in instances of 2.
Cat's
I'm
cradle
trying to.
is pretty bad, but that's a thing.
Yeah, Cat's Cradle.
Amina.
Yeah, Amina
Oh,
was
yeah,
the card I was
Amina.
thinking of. Yeah, Amina for 4. Unity probably breaks this for 2 to boost, 3 to breaks, probably about 5 as well. And Turbine on its own is going to struggle quite a bit. It's going to cost it 7 credits to break. But if you can pair it with a Turbine or a Leech, you can bring that cost down pretty significantly.
You said Turbine by itself.
I'm sorry, I
mean
mean Buzzsaw by itself.
Buzzsaw.
Yes. yeah, a lot of people are predicting without knowing what the breakers look like, what the ice looks like, but a lot of people are anticipating Buzzsaw being a pretty prominent decoder in the meta, especially when you compare it with Turbine. So it hits a base strength of 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pro Abagnale, especially considering that Mercury wants to bypass ice. So
Oh yeah, that's nice. That's a thing I hadn't thought about much. But yeah, Abagnale in Mercury is also a nice little shoot. Include.
I just want to touch on a comment that I saw from Wentagon regarding Ike as a option for something that's similar to talk about, which is currently rotating. I'll read it out for the stream, but it's Codegate Psi AP 3 strength 1 to res. It's 3 subroutines. 2 of them are do 1 net damage, but then it's a Psi game reveal spent credits. If you and the runner spend a different number, runner draws 2. I think the comparison between the two is interesting to draw. I think Ike is a slightly different card though, because it's a tax the runner for a credit essentially to draw 2 cards, and then you ping them to get the cards out of your hand. It's intentionally porous, but it's giving the runner draw and then essentially saying, hey, we're still going to punish you even though we gave you the draw. You're back to where you started. I think this is more of a it's a harder tax is probably the way I would consider it for face checking. Because I feel like money is much more important than card draw. Maybe not in a Jinteki matchup, but the free draw that Ike provides versus the net damage it's a different dichotomy. I just wanted to bring it up because I saw it earlier and it's been ruminating as we've been continuing to talk. So I wanted to see if you guys had any thoughts.
No, I think that's a good point of comparison. You know, Ike costing 1 means it's going to be much more appealing in a lot of situations. But I think your point is good that Ike kind of, as long as the runner's willing to spend 1 or 2 credits, they can kind of dodge around the actual damage. So it's just kind of a like, oh, we're going to grind out your deck a little. Whereas this card, while it is going to grind out the deck and game plan a little bit, it also is just a straight up like taxing. There's no tricks. If you want to get through, you gotta be ready to really pay for things in a pretty significant manner. I've definitely had Ikes where I was like glad that they fired because I didn't like any of the cards in my hand, and it let me draw 2 new cards, and that was good enough for me. And this card's not going to have that kind of downside or game plan. So. But yeah, I think maybe we should move on to the Shaper card at this point. I know I'm very excited about this card. I expect a lot of viewers are, and certainly some of the people on this call. So let's pull up the card. So it's the new Shaper ID in this set. Her name is Arasana Rocha Nahu is going to be my best guess, and someone could probably correct me. Her I forget I'm going to call it subtitle Street Artist. She's a 0 link 4MU 4515 natural subtyped identity, and her ability reads 0 credits as a cost. Install 1 program from your grip, paying all costs. Uses ability only once per turn and only during a run. When that run ends, trash that program if it is not a Trojan.
My Google educated pronunciation attempt would be Arasana Rocha or Rocha now, but it's not much better than yours, so I don't know if it's better at all.
All right. Thank you.
I can start by saying that I really love the character art on this. I think her outfit is super good. And yeah, the ability is exciting as well. So her ability makes me think of Carbonesa Wu, even though they don't actually do the same thing. But it's sort of another instance of a Shaper being able to maybe magic a program from somewhere that you didn't immediately expect, except this is clickless, but you need to have it in hand first. So okay, it's not the same as Carbonesa, but it's also sort of I magic a program from somewhere and it gets trashed unless I potentially do shenanigans or unless I only play Trojans.
Just to bring up, I did take a look at the existing Trojans in the game. I'm considering that we don't have any spoiled Trojans for this next cycle. Some of the shaper ones that are exciting are Egret, which just installs on a res piece of ice, makes everything barrier code gate sentry, and Cubon, which is a card that I have wanted to love ever since it came out in Reign and Reverie, and I've tried around with it a couple of times. Never seen it stick, at least in my decks, but hopefully we can see some shenanigans with that. And Ika, which is another Reign and Reverie Shaper card, and I'm hoping to see some Ika decks come
Really
through.
want to play Ika and I've never been able to make it work.
I've been
man.
playing
Okay.
Ika, or at least, yeah.
Oh, I'm going to say first, Andre called me out in chat. How much lobbying did I do for the biggest Cubon buff ever? For those of you who don't know, my profile pick on everywhere is Cubon. And there goes my mic right into my chest. Apologies for the audio, everyone. I am holding my mic on my lap because I'm doing this very professionally today. But yeah, I think there's all these really interesting interactions with the Trojans, and I'm hoping that Cubon sees a lot of play. And I think this is going to be a really interesting idea. I think the comparison to Cabinessa is also really good. This Shaper, I can surprise you with bullshit, and now I have a whole new zone from hand to do that's normally been inaccessible. I think will be an interesting space.
Clarification on Ika, right? Which it's a program you install, 0 cost, and then 2 credits, host this program on a piece of ice. Is that the way it always has to go? It goes down in your play area, and then you pay the 2 credits to move it? You can't directly install it on a piece of ice?
Yeah, if Arasana's ability said install a Trojan on a piece of ice, then you could bypass it with Ika, but because it just says install a program, you follow the normal rules for installing that program, and then it gets trashed at the end of the run, unless it's a Trojan.
Right, so you're just saving the click by running Ikas in Arasana.
Yeah, I mean, you could, but, that's sometimes pretty good. Like, oh, I want to get this program out of my hand, and so I'll run a central that's open, install the Ika, get it out of my hand, and I'm now a click ahead of where I would be otherwise. And maybe that's not, the most exciting thing, but I'm also a die-hard Haley player, and getting every extra click I can in a game is always fun.
Also, I mean, isn't it also an instance where you really only have to, you only install it if you have to? Isn't this... Okay, maybe I'm wrong about the timing here, but can you not, say, install the Ika after the ice, after Sentry has been rezzed?
Yeah.
So I think this is similar to the bin breakers, right? You only pay if you need it.
And you can get around the Trojan clause a little bit by fast installing an SMC in the middle of a run and then using the SMC to go fetch some other program. So then it's no longer around to trash anymore. So that's kind of fun. I don't know.
Yeah, I also...
Saving a click again.
Chrissy is asking about in the chat, can you hush an ice that's rezzed that has an encounter ability before encountering it? And yes, you can. And hush will get installed on, even though hush has a click to move, it says install on a piece of ice. So you get to, install it on that fun house the corp just spent 5 credits rezzing, and just laugh all the way to the bank because you just basically turned it off completely.
I love hush in this ID. It's so fun.
I hate the existence of Hush, but I probably play it in this. I don't want it to exist, but if it's in this, if it exists, you kind of have to play it in this, I think.
Yeah,
I can
Hank
see
calling
this
out.
being really, really fun. Sorry to cut you off. I was gonna say I can see this being really fun with slapping some chisels in there, maybe a chisel, just because it is a Trojan, and being able to on encounter grab this, reduce it by 1. I think you're going to see a lot of fun shenanigans of trying to reduce strength. There's a lot of possibilities for things like that. But again, it's just focusing on the Trojan aspect. I think there is a lot of you could grab a Palangi if you needed something really quick and dirty right off the top. Just slap the Palangi down, change the subtype to, or change the type of ice that you're encountering to make it work so you can get through the run. I think there's a lot of fun shenanigans that you're going to be able to do of putting surprises onto the table. And if no one else has brought it up so far, I'll bring it up. People are going to start talking about World Tree with this ID. And I've been seeing people talking about it already. And I think that's kind of at the forefront of everybody's minds because it's, I'm not going to say Cabernet light, but I think for a lot of people, it feels similar, especially if you're going to jailbreak, install for 0 and SMC, and then only pay 3 for your World Tree. I think that's going to feel pretty good, and I think a lot of people are going to do that. But that's just what I'm seeing on first look.
I also think
that feels like the SMC
you
play.
can use this on a ton of stuff that isn't a Trojan. Like, I mean, so Kitara is still legal, so we still have the package that came with Cabernet Sauvignon, the Shaper package that sort of lent a little bit into maybe Shapers installing things temporarily that you could use for this, like Flame Out and those kinds of things. Also, Chameleon works with this, right?
Chameleon does work with this, I think.
Well, it's a little bit... So you can install the Chameleon and name the ice type, but the Chameleon will trash when the run ends rather than returning to your hand, because Chameleon's trigger is when your turn ends, return it to your hand.
Okay,
Doesn't really work
fine.
with it very well.
Okay, then Chameleon is not that great. Okay, I forgot that Chameleon is end of turn, not end of run.
But
Chameleon is dirt cheap, though. Like, it's... How much is it? It's 2 to install, and then it's...
Strength 3, 1 to break.
Yeah, it's... I think Chameleon is perfectly usable, as you said. Especially, I forgot to bring it up, but Simulchip is going to be a great, I think, combo in this type of deck, especially if you need something temporary. You just install it during the run, trash it, you pay 3 less, instant speed. Hey, who cares? You're getting it out still cheap. Maybe not as cheap as you would have liked, but hey, again, that's a free Chameleon.
Bard, you were talking about, the chisel, and I think if you slap a single Devil Charm down, you have one of those in your hand, you're a threat, and nobody knows it, which is kind of fun. Also, Mayfly is just a great option to have around in this deck. I think just pop it out when you need it, break anything you need, and then it's gone, and it was going to go anyway. And if you've got your World Tree up, then we've seen that before. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I think you can do this. You can use this for a lot of programs where you're actually okay when they trash at the end of the run, and then either you get them back or they were temporary anyway.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of potential applications. Like, as a diehard Oiler player, this is like fantastic because, like, oh, Corp Res is a big code gate, and I just go, okay, I'm gonna put down my Oiler for 2 credits and then walk through this code gate for basically free. Which is
I love Oiler.
Yeah, so I think, like, it's interesting how much of a, like, it's like, oh, I'm only saving a click, is like a true argument for a lot of the, like, installs, but in some cases it's like it's the fact that you don't actually spend, like, you don't have to spend the click at all is like a big deal, because it's, instead of having to, like, pre-install and have things ready, you get to kind of, like, wing it and save that tempo if you don't want to. I think there's, like, a couple of run timing things I want to shout out. Like, we're gonna have to all get quite good at the run timings chart and all of the different res and paidability windows, because the whole point of that 0 credit cost is just to kind of hook us into that paidability window system, rather than having to write a lot of text to tie us into that paidability window system. And so the important stuff during a run is there is the approach phase, which is where the Corp can res the ice. And as the runner, you'll have the option to use the paidability window before the Corp has the option to res. So if you think it's going to be something with an on-res effect, maybe you slap a magnet down. Or, sorry, not a magnet down, a hush down. Then, once they do res the ice, you're still in the approach phase, and they pass priority back to you to use a paidability window, so you can install your program there. Then you get to the encounter phase. There's no payability window during the encounter. So if you have an on-encounter Trojan, which I don't think exists yet. No, actually, Chisel exists. You need to do it in that approach phase. Then once you get through the on-encounter step, you get into the encountering step, which is where you actually go and break the ice, and you have another payability window where you could go use this ID and then break all the ice, and then you move to passing it, and there's no longer a payability window.
I just want to ask, so you said there that, you're going to do that run event, you're going to maybe put a hush down in case of, just in case kind of thing. And then they would res, but you also have an opportunity after they res. So I'm not sure why would you install just in case if you could just wait to see what they res?
Yeah, good question.
So if they res a ping, for example, ping's effect is when the ice is resed, not when the runner encounters the ice.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not for the on-encounter effect, it's for the on-res effect.
Yeah, so if you want to try and use the hush to hard call the on-res effects, you can do that. But I think most of the time if you're holding a hush, it's probably for the on-encounter effects of the ice. But one of the fun things there is you can also, like, if the corp reses something you can already deal with, you can then slap down the Cubon after seeing what it is as well, if that's kind of what you want to do. And so, like, this has been my dream for Cubon forever, is that I can just put it down and know, like, only put it down when it's going to make me the money back. And so it can be the little ice-breaking rebate it's always been designed to be. One thing to note about that, though, if the corp declines to res the ice, you don't get to then go, okay, I'd like to put my Cubon on it now that you've declined to res, because you've passed priority first on saying I don't want to use a payability window. Then they say, oh, I'm not going to keep this window open. It closes, and you go to passing the ice immediately before you have another payability window with which to install a Cubon. So you don't get to, like, you can't do the, like, magic in response to you not resing, I'm going to do a thing. So
it feels like an apropos time to mention Andre's Netrunner timing structures video that he just did. That, like, as we're talking about this, if you are struggling with what we're talking about and not following along very clearly, he has laid out an hour and 19 minute long video going through this in and out, kind of repeating things a few times just to let it all sink in. So I highly recommend you go check that out, because it will matter, especially with this idea out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Props to Andre.
Yeah, huge thanks to Andre for putting that together. I think we will all be revisiting that video and maybe even stealing bits for future segments, because I think, especially if the Shaper ID turns out to be kind of meta-relevant, this is going to be a thing that people are going to want to make sure is explained clearly and in a lot of places.
That the timing structure for run a million times, but most gameplay situations, you don't need to know when exactly all the windows are, right? It's always these edge cases, and so maybe this is a good learning ID for us all to remember the payability windows a bit better.
That's a reason I'm excited. I'm like, oh, it's finally time to get all this hammered into my head. And I do want to say I'm very excited to seeing these two cards, including the console spoiled, that whatever else Shaper is going to get and how it's going to support Arasana and the rest of their package for this next cycle. I think this is going to be really, really interesting. And I'm hoping that there's frogs. There's a frog on the shirt. I'm hoping we have a frog card. Fingers crossed.
On Monday, if you listen to the Neon Static podcast, it's going to drop, that we recorded a little while ago. There'll be a tool for Arasana to use that we'll be talking about in there. That's very exciting, and I wish that I could talk more about it.
Well, yeah, we'll make sure to direct everyone to that podcast. I do know what this tool is, and I am excited to hear about it as well. And then for people that can't get enough of Arasana's tools, they should check out my YouTube channel on Friday. There's going to be even, I think, a couple more that might be relevant there. So it'll be pretty exciting, I think.
So the chat is talking a fair amount about the frog on the shirt that I want to talk about. I don't know if any of you read the lore article that got posted today about Arasana, which was If you haven't, go check it out. It's really good. It's really like I don't usually get too much into story stuff, but I really appreciated this. It's very cool. So like Arasana is from the slums and is an art student and struggling, and then meets someone, and there's some romance and a protest, and it's very cool. I would love to know if anyone knows what's up with the frog besides the console, which we'll be talking about in a second, I guess. But like, I was really hoping that the story article would explain the frog, and there's a mention of a bullfrog card at some point, which is like a police wagon mentioned in the story, and I wonder maybe if that is the thing why that's an icon for Arasana, but it's pretty cool either way. I do love the frog.
We already had a bullfrog, and it was a Jinteki ice from a study in static, which was one of the very first data packs, but I don't think it had. I mean, it feels like it has nothing to do with that.
That's called shot, knowing the exact pack it was from.
No, well, I mean, I had Netrunner DB open in the background. I did not know what
I believe
pack
Christina
Bullfrog was
Davis
from.
did the art for that card. Yeah.
But I will say, so, and apologies, this is going to be super brief. I saw Morgan talking about in Discord that I think in Brazil, bullfrog ends up being something of a slang for lesbian, which might be part of it, though I think from what they said, it started as just I like frogs, and then kind of kept morphing and getting more and more layers as things going. And I think that's often, like, that's not meant to be a dismissal. Like, I think that's actually a really fun way that a lot of characters evolve, where you start with something and then you discover a lot of ways to tie in meanings. And there's lots of different elements of Arasana's design from both a lore and mechanics perspective that I think end up tying in kind of fun ways, both accidental and intentional.
You know, we didn't mention it explicitly also, but Arasana is a trans person, and that is always amazing to see this game representing that entire group of people, and just love the game for doing that. Love the designers for supporting that.
Yeah, and you know, this is someone with a I would say less like common. I don't know how to say this correctly, but like a body type that we don't see a lot in Netrunner, and especially not as like a character that you can personify and play as a hero. This kind of body type's a little bit less common, and so that's a really nice thing to see as well. And I know there's a lot of people in GLC, and even some people I've been chatting to more recently that are like really excited about this kind of other part of representation.
It's definitely still the case that in board games in general, and possibly in video games even worse, female characters are not really allowed to be anything than thin and conventionally sort of conforming to conventional beauty ideals. And so I love seeing other body types, and the next thing we need is an old woman runner, because we haven't had any old women yet.
Didn't we have the criminal senator who was at least slightly older than
yes,
most runners?
And I like that, but she got banned.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Padma, at least from her card, I haven't read the lore, looked like an older woman.
No, Padma is also not super young, right. I don't think. Yeah.
Yeah, but also...
But you know, somehow the equivalent of Omar, like, where's the grizzled, gray-haired...
Yeah,
the crazy conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. Padma is a little bit like a movie star in her 60s or 70s. You know, still has some of that kind of character too about her. So,
I mean, I love Padma. Nothing against Padma.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think
we've boat she drives.
We've talked a bunch about Arasana. We should probably at least mention the console, which I'll pull up now on the stream. So this is Lilypad. It is a 4-cost hardware console. It gives +2 memory. And then the first time each turn you install a program, you may draw 1 card, limit 1 console per player, and it is 3 influence.
I'll go first. Drawing cards is good.
Yes, the drawing cards when you install your programs clicklessly is really good. So this just seems a very obvious pairing of runner and console.
the extra memory makes me happy. It's nice. It wants you to put those programs out there.
Yeah.
Something that's not obvious just from the art perspective is that I believe Lilypad is the briefcase that Arasana is holding opened up, and inside is this cool console. And that is really neat. You kind of have to squint to see the back where the leather straps are, but she opens up her Lilypad and can run nets. 4 costs is significant, but I am curious to see what the break-even point on how many programs you need to be installing is to make this worth it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like an obvious comparison point is Anacam, which is going to be 1 credit cheaper, but also 1 MU less, and a different trigger condition, right? That's more about playing events, which are like kind of generically a little more straightforward econ than programs, which tend to be a bit more utility. And so it's like, oh yeah, if I want to include something like Lilypad, I probably want to be looking at more kind of utility programs that I can install. So, again, Cubon, Hush, maybe even stuff like Egret, so I can play like 1 breaker for a longer time and kind of turn that 1 breaker into more tempo. I think that's maybe where you want to look, because if you're just installing this and planning to install, your 3 breakers and a conduit, it's probably not going to return enough value for you. So I'm not sure.
But it's leaps and bounds better than the competition. That's the flavor text.
Yes.
I think something interesting about this is it does say the first time each turn you install a program, which does, at least in my mind, incentivize you running at least once each turn. So you would run, say, I don't want to say like turn 1, right? But you run and install your SMC, and it's not going to stick around forever, but you're getting 1 card draw then. If you can get a card draw each turn for, I would say, maybe 6-7 turns, like that's pretty good. But that is forcing you to install a program 6 or 7 times, which is a lot of money. That's a lot of money, all things considered. But it also works with cards like Simulchip that I brought up earlier. I think that 2 memory is actually going to do a lot of work, because I did just pull up the other Shaper consoles, and the only other one of note, I think, right now that provides 2, I guess, would be like Super Corridor, because Endurance is banned, and Anacam and Pantograph only give 1. Mind's Eye only gives 1. I mean, okay,
So,
Daredevil gives 2, but
Daredevil gives 2. I was going to say, actually, for me, this is like Daredevil is another comparison point where, like, I liked running Daredevil, even though I mean maybe competitively it was never that much of a thing. But yeah, actually, I wonder if Daredevil might not also be a nice console for Arasana. Who knows?
Seabass in chat mentioning environmental testing econ engine here. Here we go. That's a really interesting idea, is using, environmental testing to install lots using Arasana, and then drawing cards with Lilypad and getting money off of the environmental testing. And then also Gachapon. Who's this? This is Bink. What? Binkbonkle? Awesome username. Gachapon seems great here for firing on the corp turn and actually getting your draw on the corp turn.
Yeah, I think that's a good differentiator between, as someone called out in the chat, that Lilypad is. Oh, I was Alex Boyd saying like, hey, if we're thinking of comparing this to Anacam, like it's very difficult usually to discard an event on the corpse turn. Usually it means you're taking damage, which is something you're not happy about. But you have a lot more access to ways to install programs on the corpse turn, and Lilypad will still trigger on that turn. So you'll have
Like the Simulchips.
Yeah, Simulchips, self-modifying codes are 2 examples. Maybe we'll get some more programs that can install other programs. That's always fun. But yeah, I think that makes this exciting. And yeah, I think I think it's difficult to, as I was saying earlier, to include Lilypad in kind of a reg deck, but yeah, that kind of environmental testing, like let's build a whole engine. This is like a really nice little like engine component, because it doesn't require you to build around it, but it is just going to make things smoother as you're going about and playing. So And yeah, Captain Cody. I do wish we could unrotate Tech Writer as well, because these would all go together in a really fantastic, peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I think.
Let's get a refresher for the new blood on Technical Writer.
Yeah, so Tech Writer was every time you install a program or piece of hardware, place a credit on Technical Writer, and then you can spend a click and trash the Technical Writer to take all of the credits off of it. And this was super common in old school Haley Kaplan engines, where you would install often stuff like Harbinger is the thing we're still seeing in standard at the moment, or cards like Cash that were like 0 or 1 credits. They gave you a little bit of value, and then you could sell them off to Aesops, and then you were getting even more value by having the Technical Writers down. This engine got to its most extreme with a combination of cards that I don't want to derail us talking about, but allowed you to install up to 9 cards for 9 pieces of hardware for a single click. And that meant the Technical Writers got good very, very quickly. So.
Oh, I see. This is a Data and Destiny card. So unrotate. Can we unrotate is a bit of an exaggeration because it's not rotated yet.
No, it does
legal.
rotate when these cards become street legal.
Right.
But
You have 9 days to play Kitchen Table Netrunner with these cards. Have fun.
You have infinite days to play Kitchen
that's
Table
true.
Netrunner with these cards.
9 days to practice competitively
There you go.
with new cards that aren't out yet.
yeah, no, it's true. No one from NSG is gonna come down, bang down your door, and go, "No, you cannot play Technical Writer with Arasana." But when you show up to a competitive event, they might.
The rotation police will be there.
Yes. I think we've somehow not mentioned Botulus at all in this conversation, even though it's a very obvious synergy with the ID. I think everyone's expecting this to be all over the place with this Shaper ID. But I don't want chat going, "Hey, you guys never mentioned Botulus," despite us talking about it constantly. So
It was too obvious.
I was gonna say, I think we were all thinking it, but no one wanted to say anything. It was right there.
Everybody's already playing Botulus, so I don't think it's not that much of a change.
Is it? How much better is it? I guess that you no longer need to blind install them, but how often are people doing that? I've done it, but I don't know. Like how much better does Botulus become for 9 influence or 6? I guess. Using
Same thing with
Arasana.
not pre-installing your breaker, right? It's the same kind of thing, except our Botulus will stay up where most breakers won't.
Right.
yeah, I do think it makes the Botulus even more resistant to Magnet, which is something that we're seeing a lot of to try and nerf the Botulus. And like I've started playing decks where I'm like, oh yeah, I can just install Magnet as my thing turn 1 against Anarch to just try and block it. And often I'll get the like superb value of them installing the Botulus and then trying to make the run, and I get to really just smile to myself. But
There's Tranquilizer too, but that's kind of slow. And
yeah, maybe
And,
maybe you Tranquilizer Cookbook and put on your best virus noise impression. Also, shout out to
Point Hush that we haven't mentioned, which would be that, according to how I'm reading it, Hush blanks threat abilities, right?
Yep, Hush would blank threat abilities as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can, with Hush, you can always pay the credits on, what was it called? The ice we just discussed.
Ateeny.
Teeny.
Ateeny.
Hush's stock just keeps rising, steady rising over here. There's Trapano is another Trojan also that would stay it for trashing ice slowly.
Yeah, I talked about very briefly all of the legal Trojans in Standard in my video, and I said, oh yeah, I guess I should mention Trapano is a card technically.
So this is very interesting to me because I kind of stopped playing the game initially right around when Trapano came out, and it was a terror and it was everywhere. And I'm sort of curious why everyone is so down on Trapano, because it'll trash ice.
After like 5 turns, yes. And 5 turns is a long time. And usually the Corp, if they find any time to purge in that window, they've set you back another 5 turns. So
Okay, the purging.
So the purging
If
is
you
a
play
big
other
reason.
viruses, right? They'll like if this is Trapano is not your only virus, you will want to purge probably.
Fair enough. Okay, I forgot about purging.
Right.
Yep.
You can still force them to purge.
Yeah, that's a whole turn. That's good. I don't know. I'm all in favor of jank, so ignore me.
My brain just goes, I'm just gonna start splashing more of my viruses. I'll spend the influence. I won't be happy, but I'll do it.
Yep.
But
Oh, maybe NSG will print some more virus hate in this set. You never know, right? Maybe they predicted our current anarch reign of fermenters and botuluses and are coming in with some salves, but that's not a promise. That's a I hope. So. And yeah, let's see. I think do any of you have anything else you want to say about Lilypad? We've been because otherwise I think maybe we'll start wrapping it up.
No?
I'm
All right.
excited to see it in Shaper in general, not just in Arasana. It'll be a fun. It looks like a fun console, even if it's a little pricey.
Yeah,
Actually, one more thing. Some of the cards that we were talking about being Trojans weren't always Trojans and are recently Trojans, right?
yes, a bunch of them got errata to be Trojan because Trojan was an NSG
Always
creation.
functioned as Trojans though.
So, on folks, if they don't have the remastered edition of System Gateway, is it System Gateway?
Yep.
For Botulus and Tranquilizer, right? I believe are the two. They won't in paper. They won't say it on all the cards, but they do have it.
Yep. And
Chisel also is another one that does not have it.
And Egret in System Update, because it was originally an FFG card, did not have it, but in the new System Update remaster should have the Trojan subtype. And yeah, the basic rule of thumb is I think every program except one that can be hosted on ice gets the Trojan subtype, and I'll let the guess what ice might or what program doesn't have the Trojan subtype but can end up on ice. And I'll ask Jamie to not shout it out in the chat.
No, I have no idea.
It's like 5,000 card images flashing in my mind, and none of them are right. I have no idea.
I honestly thought all the programs that go on ice.
Oh, I think I just glanced at chat and have an idea now.
All right, what's your guess then?
Is it one of the chess cards? One of the
Actually, every single Kaisa did get errata to be Trojan.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
Kaisa,
someone in
I couldn't think of
the
a keyword.
rules team really cared about the
Right.
eternal interactions with this ID, I think. So
I think them for it. It made me happy seeing the Kaisa subtype getting love.
so I'll give a hint.
What?
This is a neutral program.
A neutral pro.
Oh.
Nick, my co-host, is in chat saying, "You did this to me the other night, Eric. It's the breaker that can host on ice to break it." And I am drawing a blank.
All right, I will just go, instead of having lots of dead air, I will say, so the interaction is Baba Yaga. When you install an Ika on Baba Yaga, it gains the 2 credits host this program on a piece of ice ability.
Baba Yaga does.
Baba
Yes.
Yaga does. Wait,
Okay. Nick, you were close. Ika is the breaker that I used, but it has Trojan. But
yeah, Ika is Trojan.
Baba Yaga as a host, as a surrogate for it. Okay.
So every other program that can go on a piece of ice is a Trojan, and then Baba Yaga is the exception because, my goodness, putting Trojan on Baba Yaga would make less sense than not putting it on it. So,
Because it's only a
Yaga
Trojan.
also rotates, so it's
some of the
another
time.
only eternal thing.
Yeah.
but yeah, I think with that fun tidbit that I am very amused by. And this is definitely a question I've asked of other people before in the past, and I definitely stole it from Jamie, I believe. So thank you, Jamie. Um, I think we'll start wrapping it up. I guess, final thoughts. Maybe Bard on threat or the Shaper cards.
Threat looks really interesting. I'm excited to see how that mechanic plays out throughout the rest of the set. Shaper, I love you as a faction. I'm excited to play more of you. And again, thanks for having me on.
And Charlotte, any final thoughts?
So I always thought that this idea of playing Shaper as a faction where you maybe install things only for a bit and then they get trashed was a really cool idea. But with Carbonesa, that never happened because SMC exists. And I mean, this still works with SMC, but I'm hoping that somehow Arasana is going to give this archetype a bit more life than Carbonesa did.
Me too, for sure. And Eric, I want to make sure you get a chance to plug and then also give some final thoughts.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So we have an episode that we recorded this past weekend. So and I'm I'm actually going through and updating with little editor's notes as I learn interactions. And I did had a rules question that I asked Jeff today. She was like, make sure I have this right because I don't want to talk about it wrong on the podcast. So that is coming out on Monday, and I'm going to have the card art. Since podcasts are an audio format, I'm going to have the card art on our Instagram account. So if you go to Instagram and do that, I'm going to drop them there. All the links to the IDs are all in our show notes for everything. I believe it is Neon Static Pod for Instagram. I should know this, but I don't have that. But yeah, early on Monday, that episode will be dropping, and I'm excited. I'm a little bit disappointed we didn't talk at all about the criminal cards because all of our cards are criminal.
Oh, well, do you have something you want to say quickly about the criminal card before we wrap it up? Or did you just mean from yesterday?
Yeah. I mean, it's just a very exciting time for criminal. I think Mercury is the card that has me the most excited right now because it feels like a spiritual successor to Adam. And there's one of the cards that we have especially makes me feel that way. Very exciting time for bioroids everywhere, and apparently stressful if you live in Brazil.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear, and I probably should, especially as we get a little bit later in the season, I'll try and make sure I ask everyone what they're most excited about so far. But I feel like with 2 days in and I think 7 cards spoiled, it seems a little premature. But
yeah,
but no, that's a really good shout.
Neon Static Pod on Instagram. So if you follow that account, you will see it pop up, and otherwise, I'm sure people will grab it and post it all over the place.
Yep, and just as it's Neon Static Pod, the podcast is called Neon Static. I really enjoy it. I think everyone should listen to it. Go back and listen to their non-spoiler episodes. They're great for newer players. As a longtime old head player, I'm enjoying them a lot. It's a great energy, and I'm super enthused to have them making the space, and it was great for Eric to come on.
Thank you, Jeff.
So yeah, I think with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I will see, I'll see, hopefully the 3 of you back in chat, and I'll have 3 new guests on tomorrow to chat about the next set of exciting spoilers, which I think are a bunch of Corp IDs, if I'm remembering from the schedule correctly. So we'll see a little bit more of the Corp side, and that'll be, that's always a fun thing to see. So
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for coming on, and we'll see everyone tomorrow. Bye.